August 2nd, 216 BC. A field in southern Italy called Cannae. By sunset, somewhere between 50,000 and 70,000 Roman soldiers will be dead, more men killed in a single day than on any other day in the history of Western warfare until the first day of the Battle of the Somme, over 2,000 years later. The army that did this was outnumbered nearly 2-1. Its commander was a foreign general, far from home, with no reinforcements coming and no way to resupply. His name was Hannibal Barca, and what he did at Cannae would be studied by military academies for the next 23 centuries. This is the story of the deadliest trap ever built out of nothing but discipline, geography, and a mule train of trust from men who were about to walk straight into the jaws of a beast. 2 years earlier, Hannibal had done the impossible, marching an army, including war elephants, over the Alps in winter to invade Roman Italy directly. Rome had never faced an enemy on its own soil like this. At the Trebia River, Hannibal destroyed a Roman army with a hidden ambush. At Lake Trasimene, he annihilated another, this time luring 30,000 Romans into a fog-covered lakeside trap where they were slaughtered along the shore, some drowning in the water trying to escape. Twice Rome's armies had been erased. Twice Rome refused to negotiate. Rome's response to catastrophe was always the same: raise another army, bigger than the last. This time, they didn't just raise a normal consular army. The Senate authorized something almost unheard of: 8 legions plus allied troops. A combined force of over 80,000 men, the largest army Rome had ever fielded in one place. 2 consuls were put in joint command: Lucius Aemilius Paulus, cautious and experienced, and Gaius Terentius Varro, ambitious, brash, and convinced that Rome's problem so far had simply been a lack of aggression. The 2 consuls disagreed on almost everything. Command of the army rotated between them day by day. On the day it was Varro's turn, he did exactly what Hannibal had been hoping for since the moment he chose this ground. He marched the entire Roman army down onto a flat, open plain beside the Aufidus River, near a small supply depot called Cannae. It was perfect cavalry country, and Hannibal had the better cavalry. Hannibal's army was a patchwork of nations: Libyan veterans in captured Roman armor, Iberian swordsmen, Gallic warriors from the tribes of northern Italy, Numidian light cavalry who rode without saddles or bridles, and his prized heavy Spanish and Gallic cavalry. Altogether, roughly 50,000 men, outnumbered, far from home, supplies running low. On paper, Rome should have won this war months ago. On the morning of August 2nd, Varro gave the order to form up for battle. Roman doctrine called for depth over width. Legions were normally arranged with gaps and maneuvering room. But Varro, wanting overwhelming mass to punch through Hannibal's center, packed his infantry into an unusually deep, narrow formation. Rank after rank after rank, shoulder to shoulder, so tightly packed that soldiers in the middle could barely lift their swords. It looked unstoppable. It was, in fact, a battering ram with no room to swing. Hannibal did the opposite. He deployed his weakest troops, the Gauls and Iberians, in a thin, bulging crescent at the very center, curving outward towards the Romans like a drawn bow. His hardened African veterans, his best infantry in the entire army, he held back on both flanks, out of the initial fighting entirely. It looked like weakness at the front and strength kept in reserve. It was the opposite of what it appeared to be. On the flanks, Hannibal placed his cavalry, his heavy Spanish and Gallic horsemen on the left, his lighter Numidian cavalry on the right. Rome's cavalry, weaker and fewer in number, were positioned to match them. Hannibal too, something Varro didn't fully appreciate yet. This battle was never going to be won or lost in the center. It was going to be won on the flanks and finished from behind. The horns sounded, both armies began to move, and the largest battle Rome had ever fought began. The Roman legions surged forward into Hannibal's thin, bulging center, exactly as he wanted. The Gauls and Iberians fought hard, but slowly. Deliberately, they gave ground. The bulge that had curved toward Rome began to flatten, then curve the other way, bending backward under the weight of the Roman advance. To the legionaries pressing forward, it felt like victory. They were breaking through. They had no idea they were walking into a sack that was about to close behind them. On the flanks, Hannibal's cavalry had already smashed through their Roman counterparts. His heavy Gallic and Spanish horsemen on the left routed the Roman cavalry almost immediately. Then, instead of chasing the fleeing survivors for glory, did something disciplined and terrifying. They rode straight across the back of the battlefield to help finish off the Roman cavalry on the other flank. Then together, they turned toward the rear of the Roman infantry. By now, tens of thousands of Roman soldiers were packed so tightly into the collapsing center that many couldn't even raise their arms to fight. Men in the middle of the formation didn't know the flanks had fallen. They kept pushing forward, deeper, into what was no longer a battle. It was becoming a killing box. This was the moment. Hannibal's African veteran infantry, held in reserve this entire time, wheeled inward from both flanks and slammed into the exposed sides of the Roman formation. At the same instant, his reunited cavalry crashed into the Roman rear. In the span of minutes, a battle line became a circle. Rome's massive army, the largest it had ever assembled, was completely surrounded. What followed wasn't really a battle anymore. It was a slow, mechanical slaughter. Men in the outer ranks of the Roman formation were cut down where they stood. Men in the interior, crushed by the press of their own comrades, couldn't even reach an enemy to fight back. Many suffocated or were trampled before a blade ever touched them. The Roman historian Livy would later write that some soldiers, unable to move their arms, simply dug shallow pits in the ground and buried their own faces in the dirt to end it themselves rather than wait. It lasted for hours. By the time the sun began to set over the Aufidus River, one of the two Roman consuls, Lucius Aemilius Paulus, lay dead on the field, along with as many as 80 senators, dozens of military tribunes, and, by ancient estimates, somewhere between 50,000 and 70,000 Roman and allied soldiers. Varro, the consul who had chosen this ground and this formation, escaped with a small group of survivors, and would have to live the rest of his life as the man remembered for Cannae. Hannibal had just won the single greatest tactical victory in ancient military history, with a smaller army, on foreign soil, against Rome at the height of its power. His officer Maharbal reportedly urged him to march on Rome itself immediately, telling him that in 5 days he could dine on the Capitoline Hill. Hannibal refused. Historians have debated his decision for over 2,000 years. Was it caution, logistics, or the recognition that his army, brilliant in the field, simply lacked the siege equipment and manpower to take a fortified city of Rome's size. Whatever the reason, Rome was given a reprieve it didn't deserve after Cannae, and it used it. Rather than sue for peace, as almost any other ancient power would have after losing an entire generation of soldiers in one afternoon, Rome adopted a new strategy. A general named Quintus Fabius Maximus had already been urging patience and avoidance rather than pitched battle. Rome leaned into it fully now, refusing to fight Hannibal directly again, wearing him down instead over years, cutting off his allies one by one, until eventually Rome would carry the war to Carthage itself, to a young general named Scipio, and to a final battle at a place called Zama. Cannae remains, over 2,000 years later, one of the most studied battles in human history. Its double envelopment, a weaker center giving ground on purpose, while stronger flanks and cavalry close the trap, has been consciously copied or independently rediscovered by commanders for centuries, including German staff officers who cited it directly when planning their own encirclement campaigns in the 20th century. It's the reason military academies still teach the name of a battlefield in southern Italy that most people have never heard of. A single afternoon that came to define what it means to be tactically outmatched, and to still walk away with the deadliest victory in ancient history. Hannibal would go on fighting in Italy for over a decade after Cannae, undefeated in the field, and still ultimately lose the war. But for one single day beside the Alpheus River, he executed the most complete tactical annihilation the ancient world had ever seen, and taught every army that came after him exactly how a smaller force encircles and destroys a larger one. If you want to see how Rome eventually turned the tables and finally beat him, that story, the Battle of Zama, is coming next.